Good day, selamat datang, and welcome to the virtual colloquium by Institute of Teacher Education International Languages Campus, or better known as IPG-KBA, with the theme Humanizing Teaching and Learning, the Dynamics of Language Education in the Waves of Global Change. I, Joanne, we meet again. Your moderator, a lecturer in IPG-KBA, will be hosting this interesting session today. Today will be the 10th session of our virtual colloquium, and I hope all of you will stay tuned till the end of the session because for today we have a very special homegrown speaker. Before we get to know her, let me lay out a few housekeeping matters. First of all, everyone who attends this webinar series will be given an e-certificate after each session. Therefore, please remember to register yourself, and the registration link is pinned on the top. Second, we would love to hear from you during today's presentation. So if you have any questions for our speaker, please feel free to send it through the chat box. The speaker will answer your questions at the end of her session, of her presentation. If we don't answer your question today, we will be sure to follow up afterwards. And lastly, it would be much appreciated if you could share today's webinar with your social networks. Now, let me introduce our speaker for today, Dr. Azleena Binti Mohamad. Her presentation is entitled Language Assessment in the New Normal, an Opportunity or an Obstacle. Dr. Azleena Binti Mohamad has more than 20 years of experience in the field of secondary school education and teacher training institution. She is currently attached to the English Language Teaching Centre, ELTC, Ministry of Education Malaysia, as an academic lecturer, and her role involves coaching teachers in both proficiency and pedagogical aspects. She obtained her doctoral degree with Monash University, Australia, in the field of testing and measurement, while her master's and first degree are in TESOL. Her professional journey includes active involvement in curriculum development and revision, material selection and adaptation, module writing, language assessment, and research. She is most certainly a very active, knowledgeable academician, and we are lucky to have her here with us today despite her busy schedule. Without further ado, let's welcome Dr. Azleena Binti Mohamad.
Thank you, Ms. Joanne, for the warm welcome and brief introduction. Assalamualaikum and a very good day. Welcome to all who have tuned in this session. First and foremost, I would like to express my gratitude to the organizer of this colloquium for the opportunity to share my topic on language assessment in the new normal, an opportunity or an obstacle. My presentation will discuss or look at 5 areas. Next slide, please, Doctor. We'll be looking at the education landscape, assessment in general. Then we will then look at assessment in the new normal and how language assessment is practiced around the world, taken from journals and publications. And finally, we're looking at how it is an opportunity or an obstacle. Okay, moving on to the next slide. The education scenario has recently taken a turn towards a focus in the integration of technology as a means for delivery. Before the pandemic, there was a widely held notion that technology will revolutionize the field of education, whereby it was commonly believed that technology will alter how teachers instruct. But in reality, not all teachers are and were in favor and equally enthusiastic about using technology as part of their instruction. Some are probably more open to incorporate digital solutions, while others present higher levels of resistance to technology integration. But now I believe that we are in the transition to gradually materialize that notion as teachers and educators around the world are forced to relook at the different assessment modalities available due to the pandemic. As highlighted by Professor Dr. Zuraida Mohamad in the first session of this webinar series, she said that the impact of the pandemic has resulted to the change in lesson delivery. So when the lesson delivery is impacted, so does the assessment delivery. And this is because learning and assessment is an entity and should not be treated separately. Next slide, please. Now, assessment is an integral part of the learning process, and it is actually a fundamental feedback mechanism in education, allowing all stakeholders of the learning process to understand what is being learned and where learning resources need to be focused. It is important, as quoted by Deborah Cruzon 2010. Assessment assists us in making all kinds of decisions and helps us grow both intellectually and socially. Now, educational institutions and academic programs will require the academic staff, teachers, or educators to actually assess their students in a specific way, then submit either a numerical score or a band, and when time allows, feedback will normally accompany these scores or band. And it is actually the expected duty of an educator and teacher to ensure that assessment is carried out. Now, assessment may come in different modalities depending on its purpose, as it provides the teacher the data they need to either inform and improve their instruction, and also to identify their learners' ability and performance. As Backman and Palmer 2010 highlighted, assessment is systematic and substantive grounding. There is a process involved and often based on a specific content. I believe we are all very familiar with the concepts of summative and formative assessment. And both of these assessments are in normal circumstances, are carried out by teachers in the classroom as part of the teaching process and encompass everything from teacher observation, continuous feedback, up to examination. So briefly, summative assessment is often conducted at the end of a course or a unit to determine the extent to which students reach the expected learning goals and acquired critical knowledge and skills, whereby formative assessment is particularly relevant to understand the learning needs of each and every student and to adjust instruction accordingly. Furthermore, it provides snapshots of current learning and distance to determine the goal. The next slide will look at assessment before the pandemic. Now, prior to the pandemic, all modalities of assessment had been strongly dependent on learners' physical presence, either for administrative purposes or for observing their daily progress. However, the pandemic had made such implementation challenging. The current situation necessitates the development of alternative approaches in delivering the critical feedback function of learning assessment. Thus, there is a need to look at the options available in the new normal for teachers to continue assessing their students to support learning continuity. Assessment in the new normal. In today's presentation, the focus on language assessment in the new normal and whether the situation poses an opportunity or an obstacle as its users and intended clients. In order to address that, there is a need to first explore how language assessment is conducted in this pandemic, and then examine the merits and challenges it offers to the education field. Next slide, please, Doctor. The other one, the next one. Okay. With the new normal, many teachers and educators have shifted to what I call as a remote language assessment on virtual platforms. All right. So virtual here can mean either online or offline method. In places where internet connectivity and access to computers or other devices are widespread, learning management systems and online platforms have facilitated remote language assessment administration. However, in low resource contexts, limited internet connectivity and low access to smart devices have prompted teachers to explore other means, for example, using phone-based assessment through direct phone calls, short message services, or known as SMS, or interactive voice response technologies. So these are the um, available means in which communication still can continue between the teacher and the students. All right, moving to the next slide, we will look now at the different language assessment practices around the world. Now, in Malaysia, for example, teachers have shared their experience in conducting language assessments uh, via webinar series, at conferences, and also publication. I would like to extract one example, which was shared by a teacher in a webinar entitled Strengthening School-Based Assessment, Empowering Teachers in the Classroom, which was aired in 2020. She mentioned that she utilized project-based tasks in conducting language assessment for a unit in the textbook. Students were provided with a report card to track the completion of tasks listed with the help of the parents. Then these students are assessed through Instagram video review and also journal writing. So she also added that teachers are still adopting various applications and online platforms to conduct assessment, for example, Quizzes, Jamboard, Padlet, and ClassKit. So in Malaysia, the practice is there, in which we are using um, virtual tools to help assessment to be carried out. Yeah. And as reported in an article in the Star, August 2020, our local university, University Kebangsaan Malaysia, conducts their written exams using both online and offline methods. Apart from that, they have also opted for continuous assessment approach in replacement of the final exam. For example, they employ the use of projects, assignments, open book exams, online quizzes, reports, creating portfolios, and a few online tests that carry a heavy weightage requirement to a final exam. This approach in assessment is in line with the Ministry of Higher Education's recommendation reported in the Star the same month, that public universities are allowed to make adjustments and modifications to the methods of continuous assessments or final assessments with assurance that they align with the learning outcomes of the course. I would like to extract an example of a practice in Sierra Leone. I hope I pronounced it correctly. It was from an article by Baron Kobo, Munaz Najar, and Siarusta in 2021, where the main remote learning channel is actually the radio. And students are provided with a live and toll-free phone line, which they can use to call teachers with questions and schedules of radio lessons, which allow these children to actually view them in their free time while they help their families in their daily chores. Okay, with their daily chores. And assessment is also conducted through these means. So it's very interesting how, I believe, because of the lack of resources, so they have opted to that option. A journal by Ananda Istrini Mohamad and Gary Oki in 2021 highlighted how Brigham Young University, Hawaii, had moved their English placement test, which was delivered face-to-face, to an at-home testing. Okay, in this testing, Canvas was used as the delivery platform and Proctorio as their test proctoring system. However, these writers also discovered that Iowa State University did not choose to use synchronous at home assessment delivery, although it was considered as an option. This is practically because, due to the limitation of technology and challenges with security, among other obstacles, so they decided to still deliver the test face to face with a bevy of accommodations to help ensure a safe assessment environment. A similar example of Brigham Young University assessment practice is our very own, the one that we have offered now, Aptis Remote, that contains the benefits of online testing with video monitoring to ensure a secure experience and reliable results. With this new remote method, Aptis is delivered on the Janison Insights platform, all right, and candidates are monitored through test taking software known as Proctor Track, which they will need to download onto their computer before the test is taken. So when they actually download that, they're supposed to scan the room in which they'll be taking the exam, so that to ensure that there's no other individual that to distract or even sign of cheating. Yeah. All right. In Indonesia, a study by Yulianto and Mujtahid 2021 as well found that teachers use students' performance during online class and assignments for assessing language skills. Others have also utilized Google Forms, WhatsApp, or other social media to assess students' understanding. And when testing the students' achievement, the teachers use tests such as multiple choice questions, essays, fill in the blanks, and these tests are then sent out to the students using social media. So the study found that there are 6 online media which are often used by teachers to teach and assess their students. They are Google Form, WhatsApp, email, Google Classroom, quizzes, and Edmodo. Right? So very interesting in how language assessment is actually practiced in few of these countries apart from our own home country. I would also like to highlight some examples extracted from an article by UNESCO in April 2020. In Hong Kong, for example, exam results are one of the most important criteria for university admission and employment requirements for many companies. So due to the concern of equity, validity, and transparency, online testing was not retained as an option. So the Hong Kong Diploma of Secondary Education Examination, which is the highest state exam that determines access to higher education, was actually postponed until a suitable date or time was decided for its implementation. And I believe this is very similar to the scenario that we had in Malaysia, or we are still experiencing in Malaysia, whereby we had to postpone our high stake examination, to name some, SPM and STPM. And with that decision, we had to ensure that a safe examination environment was secured and to ensure that the examination was conducted with minimal or zero chance for the spread of the virus. Okay. From the same article, I've also extracted a practice from Uganda. Okay, Ministry of Education of Uganda shared the same view about high-stake exam, but has actually had a different approach or adopting a different strategy, in which although high-stake exams are considered as the ultimate outcome of the education system in Uganda, the government is in the process of reviewing the curriculum and moving towards formative assessment. And in this formative assessment mode, they would like to emphasize on self-assessment and home-based assessment. In Argentina, the pressure is somewhat lighter. The article mentioned that in many Latin American countries, there's a long tradition of classroom-based assessments rather than standardized high-stake exams. Now, the fairness and equality of such assessments to ensure the same standards across the country is in itself a challenge, yes. And while online assessments are being explored, there is a concern that it will increase inequalities due to the lack of internet access. So in addition to cost. So their strategy is basically more targeted at the school level, whereby the support is more to help teachers deliver their classes to the students, receive their coursework, and then assess them at school level, not at nation level. All right. The next slide, please. All right. So there are some of the These are some of the language assessment practices gathered from my readings and observations. And from my analysis, the decision taken on the type of assessment used depends on the purpose of its implementation. When it comes to high-stake examinations, decision for shifting to an online mode is not favorable, as there is a question of validity and reliability of the results. Thus, test providers would take extra safety measures to ensure the examination can continue to be implemented with the physical presence of the candidates. Nevertheless, such high-stake exam can still take place online, provided that a monitoring mechanism can be installed to ensure reliable results. It is inevitable that language assessment landscape undergoes a transition. But how would we perceive this change? Do we see it as an opportunity, or do we see it as an obstacle? Moving to the next slide. So what I think is prevalent in the language assessment practice is that I've shared is that teachers have grown professionally to adapt to the new education landscape, and they have become proactive by seeking possible ways via online and offline to ensure assessment continues to be part of the learning process. And I would regard this situation as an opportunity for several reasons. Yeah. So next slide, please. So conducting or implementing language assessment in the new normal poses actually four opportunities. First opportunity is actually leverage technology, allows you to actually leverage technology. The current education landscape demands our learners to be in front of a laptop, a computer, or a mobile device that connects them to the learning platform. So technology can be used for instant assessment, helping to boost engagement, identify knowledge gaps, and support deeper learning. The need to conduct language assessment in the current education landscape opens doors to the variety of online tools and applications available for assessment. As you can see on the slide there, we have 27 assessment tools available, and teachers can now explore them to match their instructional needs. There's a vast range of applications available to help teachers assess students depending on their personal interests, abilities, and goals. As a trainer myself, in my workplace, I had to explore these different types of applications available because in before the pandemic, our nature of training is face-to-face, physical presence with the participants. However, the transition due to the pandemic has made us be more we need to be aware of the different types of tools available, applications available, so that to see whether they match the requirement of our target clients. So apart from that, like cloud-based learning, for example, provides increased flexibility as students can access and complete online assessment at the time that best suits them in their individual learning styles and needs. And all they need is actually internet-ready device and a web-based or virtual environment. So this is one of those elements that I believe the humanistic approach or element to education in specific the language assessment context, yeah, whereby we now celebrate individuality, we celebrate the different learning styles for our children, and we allow that to take place with the use of these applications available for assessment. And one thing also I believe it takes away the anxiety. Whenever you are placed in an exam context, the anxiety sometimes it will influence your performance. But when it is done in this nature, it reduces that anxiety. There are tools available to also increase students' engagement and improve learning by setting different questions to different students depending on their ability, learning style, or project. For example, I just came across this application called ClassFlow. All right. By assessing students in this manner appropriate to them, they are less likely to be frustrated and disengaged and more likely to succeed. So, apart from that, technology allows students to also use audio and video. I mean, teenagers nowadays, or students in this era, are very familiar with the different social media applications available, and they do better than us teachers sometimes. All right, so we use that skill that they have to actually record themselves, audio or video, and create podcasts. Remember the teacher I shared about Instagram video reviewing. So we use that to the benefit of our students and also our teaching, and assess them in a platform whereby they are more comfortable and familiar with. Am I right? So when we ask students to create podcast presentations to review their learning, in doing so, we not only will the students consolidate their learning in a medium that is familiar to them, but they will also produce a valuable learning resource for other students. All right. Technology also allows instant feedback to be generated. For example, we for writing, yeah, we have this tool called Write and Improve and online text correction, in which these tools give you instant feedback and on the paragraphs that you have written, or the written product that you have, and encourage students to improve their writing independently, where we actually encourage self independent learners. Yeah. And by using the tool instant automatic feedback and hints on areas that you need to focus on. So there are many tools available, and with the current situation, it allows that to take place. Apart from that, this transition in language assessment in the new normal also expands the need to diversify the assessments teachers use for their students. Now, this one I would relate closely to alternative assessment. I would like to extract from what Dr. Patricia Nora from session 4 highlighted in this webinar series. She highlighted that due to the current situation, there is a need to design an assessment with the characteristics that support trusting relationships and care for the students' well-being, while providing challenging and meaningful way for students to demonstrate their knowledge and understanding, and thus the need for alternative assessment. Now, with alternative assessment, we are actually moving away from the traditional way of testing and use assessment that can reflect our students' true ability and proficiency level. Dr. Patricia, in her session, shared how her faculty employed employed alternative assessment and gathered positive feedback and recommendations for continuous use of such assessment at post-pandemic. It was also the decision made by Ministry of Education in Uganda, remember, as I shared earlier on, in which they reviewed their curriculum to give way for alternative assessment to have a place in the system. Now, apart from that, the language assessment in the new normal also necessitate the need to reconsider our pedagogical goals and expectations. Now, teachers should have realistic expectations about what can be accomplished remotely and use their professional judgment to assess the consequences of their plans. It is important to find a good balance between what is effective and what is feasible to do remotely. Yeah, and then this would then calls for the need to revisit the curriculum. I was very attracted with the notion or the point highlighted by Professor Zuraida in her session, and she said there is a need to reprioritize the curriculum goals, given the reality that the mechanism of delivery for both not just learning but also assessment is disruptive. All right, it doesn't work the normal way anymore. So the curriculum should be more flexible and less restrictive, and we can reimagine better assessment with technology. Okay, so with every opportunity always lies the challenges or the obstacles. So for language assessment to strive in the new normal, there is a vital need to address these obstacles. So when the pandemic hit the education system, teachers are cornered with the demands of effective instruction and assessment, and their struggle with their competency in technology integration. Many were Many claim that they were not trained in the field. And as mentioned earlier in this presentation, not all teachers are in favor or were in favor or equally enthusiastic about using technology as part of their instruction. Although some are very open and incorporate those digital solutions, however, some still resist from using technology. And in Malaysia, for example, although the ministry has actually subscribed to the use of Google Classroom for instructional use, we still have teachers who have yet to know exactly how to use the tool. All right. Now, this is the obstacle that policymakers and education providers need to be aware, and thus training is fundamental to ensure that teachers can effectively plan, administer, and monitor language assessment via online mode. Apart from that, the pandemic was unprecedented, and teachers were at the earlier stage not ready for the situation to prolong. We were just anticipating that it will last for about a month or 2 or 3 months. Nobody expected that the situation could actually extend for more than a year. Thus, nobody was ready for the change. Not just the teachers, but also the students and parents. Because I'm a parent myself. The um, the acceptance of the change in the education landscape was difficult for those in the education setting. Many uncertainties arise, especially those concerns assessment. Parents question on how assessment will be carried out. Students fear the idea of doing assessments online, and teachers are in conflict with the best assessment method to be used in the pressing situation. So it was an obstacle for it to take place. The issue of connectivity, I believe, is a worldwide issue. In some parts of the world, I know internet connectivity is limited and restricted, as highlighted in a study by Nohairi Ahmad, Ina Suryani, Abdul Rahim, and Salawati Ahmad in 2021. Infrastructure that covers access to the internet, bandwidth, speed, and stability, plus availability of effective management system platform and recommended tools is one of the main challenges in online assessment. This was also echoed by Professor Zuraida when she highlighted there is a need to actually close the gap or address the gap in the technological divide that we have in different locations of our country. So connectivity is a problem. In an ideal situation, yes, language assessment in the new normal is possible. However, provided that such access to connectivity has to be made available to all parts of the country is very important. And finally, the issue of validity and reliability, which is the fundamentals of assessment. Studies have shown that teachers and educators have narrated the challenge of conducting assessment in terms of planning, executing, and monitoring the reliability and validity of the processes, particularly for the summative assessment, as highlighted in the practice I've shared earlier on. For instance, identifying suitable and balanced assessment tools for specific language skills, be it receptive and productive skills, was quite difficult due to the issues of tools available, assessment literacy, online literacy, and also internet access. However, despite all these obstacles, there is still a possibility, there is still an opportunity for language assessment to still continue to take place within the new norm. All right. So that comes to my conclusion, whereby the changing landscape for language assessment in the new norm depends, I believe, on how teachers and educators, yeah, the conclusion, please, how teachers and educators embrace the change. If you perceive it positively or as an opportunity, we are able to grow professionally. A classic example would be how teachers actually explore the different tools available in order to ensure that learning and assessment continues despite the distance they have between the learners, within the students, without the physical presence of the students. And however, acknowledging and addressing the obstacles will actually help support the change to take place more effectively. So, with that, that's how I would see language assessment in the new normal at the moment. And yeah, I'm open to questions. Back to you, Miss Joanne.
Thank you, Dr. Aslina, for the sharing. You have certainly provided more refined insights into online language assessment with lots of relevant literature review. And I am personally attracted to the truth, okay, behind the scene of this online language assessment. So,
Yes.
teachers, let's look on the positive side. An opportunity in this new normal, or is it that you are still looking at it as an obstacle? Okay, so I have a question here for you, Dr. Aslina.
Yeah, sure.
Since there is an age limit to sign up for an account with social media, those underage learners, okay, how do they have similar opportunity to carry out online assessment, let's say on Instagram, Facebook, yeah, and then looking at the security and cyberbullying that are widely going on. If let's say they also do use their parents' account, so what do you see in this for underage users? They can't sign up an
Okay.
account with social media.
All right. I believe there's a reason why underage users are not allowed to actually register on certain social media
Mhm.
platforms. For example, Instagram. I know Gmail as well, Yahoo, to open an account in Yahoo for several reasons. So, um, those are the limitations of the social media platforms available. However, we have actually plenty of others. So there are actually other means of doing so. In fact, if you're not able to go on Instagram, for example, you can actually still do it in the manual way, and still get the same feedback. For example, the use of Schoology, in which you can actually post a video or a recording, and then you can get actually feedback from the group of students in your class, or even if you were to open it to others, you can do that even in classroom, forget Google Classroom, which is possible. So do not confine yourself to only a particular set of social media applications available just because they have direct access to it. There's always room to explore others, and as I mentioned in my presentation as well, we have plenty in the platform in which teachers can actually explore and try use them. We wouldn't know until we actually use them. Recently, I explored Peer Deck. I went into ClassFlow, and when you explore these applications and tools, then only you can see how they can fit well into the kind of assessment. But first, you need to know what are you planning to assess, and how will these tools actually help you um, materialize the intention, yeah, well, with your students. So I don't see it as a limitation. uh, with the right age,
Mhm.
probably when they are more responsible in how they can handle social media, then that will be the age whereby we can actually use their ability to access those into our teaching. And I believe for young learners, to get them into social media, and then be exposed to cyberbullying will not be a good option. So there are other educational tools available which you can actually use. That's how I look at it.
Okay, Thank you, Dr. Aslina. All right, you are
I
welcome to
see there's a
post
lot
your
of
questions.
the audience comes
Mhm.
from different background, and it would be nice if some of our audience can actually share their language assessment practice in their home country, or even if you're from Malaysia, how you actually practice language assessment in your own classroom with your students, it would be good that we were to be shared these experiences. I would love to open that to the audience.
Yes, questions? Yes, kindly post your questions on the chat box.
Probably they're so overwhelmed with the insights information.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because language assessment, which is done online, it has many setbacks, and a few
Yes.
things are like insecurity of whether, um, how to say, the genuinity, and then whether the pupils are assisted in answering the questions,
Yeah.
you see.
Yeah,
And
I agree with you. There are limitations. I mean, even with the physical one, you still have limitations as well. So it's a matter of how we plan and we execute the assessment itself will actually secure you that reliable results that you want. For example, open book tests or
yes,
open examinations,
yes,
the kind of questions that you construct does not allow the candidate to actually cut and paste elsewhere. It has to
mm-hmm,
come genuinely from the candidate itself, from their knowledge and understanding
mm-hmm,
of the questions. Then that will be some kind of the control that you will have upon the assessment. So I think what teachers need is the knowledge to actually know how to plan well, because when you do it online, you kind of don't have that control over the situation. You see, you're just going to impart the test item or assessment item task to the students, and they are on their own to actually address it. So you need to know the what are the tools available, the kind of questions that is possible to be used in this kind of assessment, so that it does not open that room
mm-hmm.
for plagiarism, for example, or even cheating. Yeah, there
Okay,
is a
Dr.
question here.
Azleena, we have a question for you. Yes,
Yeah.
here. Yeah, you
Occurs,
mentioned
occur.
problems that may
Mm.
occur. Yeah.
May occur in the year. My question is, how should we manage to address these particular problems? Yeah, I think some of it I've already addressed just now when we talk about controlling, trying to minimize cheating, to ensure that it is the valid
Integrity.
representation of their knowledge or proficiency. So it comes down to how you plan your assessment questions, and you must be clear of what your objective is for that particular assessment. Now, one thing about language assessment in the new normal, when you do it on a virtual, you can't really um, address so many at one time. You might need to have portions of a bigger goal, and you segment it into small scale assessments, in which when you accumulate them, you get the whole representation of the student's ability or performance. So these are the things that you might need to consider. And being online, I think, like, if you are a big test provider, you will need to secure the monitoring uh, software in order to do that. But I think, if I'm not mistaken, if you're on because I did do something on Google Form, all right, and when you enable the unlock mode, I'm not sure of the word, but that will not allow the candidate or whoever that's attempting the task to open other windows. So there are functions available on the platform or the tools that allows you to actually secure and minimize tendency for people to cheat. Yeah. Okay. There's another question here.
Yes.
Doctor, in your opinion, which learning skills have more impact on students' performance during online classes? All right. Learning skills, are you referring to the language skills, in terms of the skill, in terms of whether it is the writing, reading, speaking, and listening? If you were to ask me, it depends on the kind of assessment that you use, and I believe if you train your students to do on writing, for example. We have a few tools available to help them actually identify their errors within within their own writing, and that can actually improve the writing skills. Listening to your own, recording yourself, and get feedback. I think basically um, the virtual platform, or conducting the assessment on the virtual platform, allows you to actually uh, manage for all the skills, depending on the choice of application or tools used uh, to actually gauge their ability. That's how I would like to look at it. There is another
Okay,
question
yes,
here.
another question.
Now
How
questions are
does
coming up.
online assessment cater for cases of impersonation? Yes.
Okay, impersonation. I think a good example would be what the this is what I know, yeah, from at this remote, where they need to register themselves and they have to do onboarding. I think that's the term they use, onboarding, whereby a few days before the test is taken, they have to actually scan not just themselves but also the whole room. So on the test day itself, should they find or able to track that there's some uh, you know um, there's some issues with the person who's supposed to be sitting and all that, then the results will be held. I mean, they're not going to release the results. So it comes down to the monitoring software. I know with digital, I can just switch off my camera and it can be somebody else behind the screen talking about a particular topic or presenting. So it goes back to um, the available software that the institution organization has or is using in order to secure and try to reduce as much as they can impersonation. That's how I would look at it.
Yes.
Okay.
Impersonation, especially when they are twins. So the next question you have here, can you please give us an example of language assessment in this new normal? And she gave you a smiley.
Okay. I think what makes it in the new normal would be not having the physical presence of the students. And I think I did mention in my presentation, it does not, when we say virtually, it does not have to be online per se, but it can also be offline, whereby I think it was the assessment practice in where was it? Yeah, just now. I think in Indonesia, whereby they actually developed the test, MCQ questions in the normal way, but they distribute the questions through the online platform. Either they do it via email, because as I mentioned earlier, not everybody, or I mean, not every country has the uh, have access
Facility?
to internet, and I know some countries have very limited access to internet, and therefore it will be, when you talk about different in the new normal, we tend to do more than what we normally do within the four walls of the classroom. But the objective of the language assessment is still attained. So, as I mentioned earlier as well, sometimes in a normal classroom, we can just achieve or assess three assessment goals. But maybe in the new normal, we need to break it down, and each of those goals might use different applications or tools in order to achieve all three goals together. So this is what I mean by diversifying your assessment. You use different tools to actually assess your students, and not and technology allows that, and technology allows that to take place, and gives you more variety in the different tools
Yes.
that you can use. But again, teachers have to be familiar with it.
Mm-hmm.
Provided that teachers are familiar with it, they need to explore and learn about it first before you actually use. Because if not, there will be hiccups. There will be hiccups, and at the end of the day, it will backfire you in terms of its implementation. So, yes, there are many, but again, you know, you need to be very selective as well.
Yes.
Alright.
We have another question here.
Yeah.
So, how do we assess students' academic honesty in an online class?
Okay. I think this is quite relevant to the previous question as well.
Yeah.
You talk about, impersonation, cheating and all that, and I think we have to come to a point where we just have to trust our students. As how students have trust in us, we have to have that trust in our students, and you must impart that idea to your students to show that it is not something to degrade you. Assessment is not there to degrade you, but it's there to help you improve. And until that idea, that notion is understood by the learners, they will find all the means and ways to actually cheat, regardless how tight your security is. Even in a physical classroom or in a physical examination, people can cheat as well. So it doesn't matter, I mean, whether it's online or. But again, it comes back to, I believe, the rapport you have with your students, the trust you have with your students, the understanding itself, and that will actually, if not at all, it will actually help minimize that, honesty in actually sitting for the test for yourself and not getting others to sit for you instead.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. I believe that Dr. Aslinga has been answering, giving examples of tools from the beginning
Yeah,
until the
there's
point
a lot of
where,
tools available.
yes,
Even
yes.
some photos
So,
in the 27 that I've already shared in that poster, I've not actually ventured all, but I would look forward to actually see what are the possible ones. I know some of these tools have very limited features because in order for you to fully utilize the tools, you
yes.
need to actually buy the license, all right?
Yes.
Purchase the
The
license,
premium package.
yeah, premium package and all that. But then with the limited features itself, it's good enough for you to take off. I mean,
Sufficient.
even if you have a 7-day trial, why not?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would grab
Yes.
it.
So earlier we have spoken about tools which are used for assessment learning. We also consider those safe tools meant for underage learners earlier, right? And we have a teacher here who gives her opinion saying that to assess our students through observation and writing according to their participation during our online and offline class. Okay, so could be an opinion there. Let us look at one more question, shall we?
Yeah, sure. Why not?
Okay, so here, how to engage or make sure all the students do the work or assessment given? Yes, not only primary school, I believe, secondary school as
Yeah,
well,
I
and
think
college
I think this one
students
applies at every level of the
agree.
institutional
Yes,
education setting. All
yes,
right. Now, I think that one does not fall back on to the assessment alone, but it also applies to all kinds of setting, whereby in the learning setting or all that. Um, how do we get them to get engaged? I think one of the ways is to make it more relevant to them. Um, the humanistic element of the task itself can actually make them engage in the whatever work or task or exercise or worksheet that you have actually prepared for your students. Once they feel that it's relevant to them, all right, it's connected to them,
okay.
then they will attempt it actually attempt to do the task, and that's what we want. Yeah. I think in terms of engagement, it falls back to the type of materials, activities, or topics or even the subject that we have in store for our students. So if it attracts their interest, if it's something that they feel worthwhile to attend, they will. It's not by force, but the material itself. I think gamification now is the in thing now, and making it like a quiz. In fact, when I conduct training, I gamify some of the activities. It also attracts my participants who are teachers. So you see, sometimes some elements of games are not just for children, but they are also for adults.
Yes.
So these are the kind of things that we might need to consider when we
Mhm.
construct our assessment. Doesn't mean that they play games, they are not being assessed. It might be the best
Yes.
way of getting them to
True.
be committed in the assessment and a true reflection of their ability.
So when it is in the form of game, those who have been keeping quiet, ignoring the
They
work,
will
they will come in.
emerge
Yes.
themselves.
Yes. Set the bait and hook the fish.
Yeah, you
Yeah.
set the bait right and you will get it.
Yes. Okay. Pretty interesting there. Okay. One last question. Are you
Okay.
okay? All
Yeah,
right.
yeah.
How teachers, okay, how teachers diversified their teaching methods to follow this new generation of students that are so techno savvy,
Mm,
digital natives. Yeah, we have.
yeah.
I believe we are teachers, or I myself also. We rather want to click or not to click. So how? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, yeah, we can't deny the fact that our students are more technologically savvy than teachers. All right, because they their interest and their focus are in that area, and I would take it as an advantage in which we can actually get them to help us to understand certain how certain tools work, and when they are part of that decision making in ensuring the right platform or the right tool to be used to assess, then they will find it to their benefit, not deconstruct, but the familiarity with the tool itself. So I think with this new generation, we need to not just look at ourselves as the only source of knowledge, or the only one who's going to impart whatever new things that's available in the technology, but welcome and embrace the knowledge that our learners have, and get them to come on board to help us to find the right way. Sometimes you never know, it will surprise you.
Yes.
The kind of feedback they will give you, teacher, I think if you want to do this kind of activity, why don't you try this too? And surprisingly, it works well because they know how the tool works. You see, and it's at their advantage because they know how to maneuver the tool, but not the content. The content is still yours. The teacher still have
Yes.
control over the content. So I see it as a very good opportunity there. And yeah, I think that's how we need to change the way we ourselves um, portray our role with our students,
Mhm.
and we need to
Agree.
welcome this knowledge, and make it benefit for
Yes.
the both parties. It's not just on the
Yeah.
teacher's part, but also on the student's part.
Okay. So thank you so much for the responses, for enlightening us on the topic language assessment in the new normal, an opportunity or an obstacle. I believe that our discussion here, the Q&A, is so interesting that it has expanded. Instead of language assessment, it has become online assessment. Okay. So now, I'm sure all of us are clearer now with how our online language assessment can be
Yeah.
more structured and practical after listening to Dr. Azleena. Okay, so hope that all of you there have gained quite a lot insights on the matter and enjoy her presentation. So
Thank
this
you.
concludes the webinar. Thank you all for attending near and far. around the globe. Okay, we hope that certainly you have enjoyed, and I personally have chuckled a few times. Now, with this, I would like to thank the Educational Resources and Technology Division, PSTP MOE Malaysia, for the platform, the organizers, and our lovely repertoires. So please do not forget, or please remember, be positive. Please remember, our next webinar series will be held this coming 7th October 2021 on Thursday, and it will be live at 3 p.m. Okay, 3 p.m. Malaysian time. Till then, goodbye from Malaysia.